Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Special Common Council meeting on the budget public hearing and capital improvements program budget, meeting of November 15th, 2022. We'll start with the roll call. Please indicate your presence on your roll call device, and the clerk will call the roll.
Alderperson Boyette.
Here.
Orchard.
Here.
Hillstrom.
Here.
Lendrum.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Skirms.
Here.
Steiner.
Here.
Stevenson.
Here.
Could everybody indicate their presence on their device? Thank you. Alderman Boyette, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States, to the republic, one nation, God.
So this is my first time in this chair, having been in one of the alderman chairs for the past 8 years, so bear with me as this is my first budget in this chair. But item number 2 on the agenda is the 2023 budget public hearing. So at this point, it's your opportunity, the public's opportunity to make any comments or express any concerns they have relative to the 2023 operating budget and 2023 capital improvements program budget. And I would like to open that public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on the budget? Please come forward and give your name and address.
Jerry Andrews, 1608 Lone Oak Drive. First, I'd like to thank all of you. I know how much hard work you've all put in. But I'm here tonight to ask you to not go with the amendment to to cut the $30,000 for the plan for Carpenter's Preserve. The current plan is over 20 years old. It's basically a good plan, but needs to be updated. We have sidewalks that dead end that don't connect to anything. There's been some additional property added next to the town of Neenah's fire department. But most important to me is that we need a strong and good vegetative plan. I've been leading a group of volunteers cutting buckthorn and mulching the trails, but we need to build more support for this around a solid plan on how we're going to deal with it. We have over 50 acres of woods that are being infested by buckthorn. Time is of the essence. We can't lose more time. Once we have an updated plan, we can start writing grants to get money for a step-by-step implementation. We don't want to lose more time and more spreading of the buckthorn. There are a lot of people that really are interested and hopeful that there's been a lot of start and stop efforts on Carpenter's Preserve, and I hope this isn't just another one. This is my second time with cancer, so I know how time is important. So I'd ask you for your consideration to keep that $30,000 in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kate Hancock Cook. I live at 216 Bosworth Court. I don't know if you need to know that. Anyway, that's where I live, in the city of Neenah. I also, as you may know, serve on the Park and Rec Commission and the Planning Commission. And I'm here also to speak against taking the Carpenter Reserve budget money, or the plan money, out of our budget. I think that I know that it has been, as Jerry alluded to, it has been moved numerous times. We have gone through numerous iterations. We continue to kick the can down the road, as it were. Kind of like what we did with Fresh Air Park, if you remember. And last year, yay, and this year we finally got Fresh Air Park to be improved, and I think that that's going to be a huge boon to the city. But the Nature Trail neighborhood has been there for a long, long time, attached and adjacent to Carpenter Preserve, and Carpenter Preserve has been going to be planned, going to be expanded, going to be whatever for a number of years, and it seems like an unfulfilled promise. And I think that that's something that we need to consider, is that how that neighborhood has lived with that plan, the continual change or lack of action on the plan for Carpenter Preserve. And as Jerry alluded, time is of the essence in many different ways in our lives, but I've been on the Park and Rec Commission for a long, long time, and we had not had a volunteer step up to say, yes, I will start working on the Carpenter Preserve. Certainly not one as qualified as Jerry Andrews, who you may not know has spent his entire life as a landscaper, owned a very successful landscaping business, and is very interested in improving and maintaining Carpenter Preserve. He has a great amount of energy to do it, but we don't all know how, we know that energy and that initiative in a neighborhood is important, and he's willing to do that. And we've had two days, maybe we're having another one soon, volunteers showing up. That hasn't happened so much for a long, long time. So I think that we, sort of strike while the iron is hot. We have volunteers who are willing to do the work. We simply need to update the plan to keep moving forward. And I would ask you to find the money to fix the Whiting Boathouse somewhere else in the budget and keep this in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mike Dubois, 1469 Amendment Drive. I come tonight, I see a few people from our neighborhood. I don't know how many are all here because I don't recognize all the faces. A lot of us came last Thursday, spoke to you guys about the upcoming Capital Works project for our curb gutter sidewalks. And I would ask that you guys kindly consider the motion I had sent to Scott about removing sidewalks tonight. We got clarification from Jerry about some of the cost estimates. And while that helped alleviate some of our nerves, we're still worried that the $100 per square foot is way too low, and we're going to be seeing a bill that, quite frankly, a lot of us aren't prepared to cover. We knew that this project would be coming eventually, but to hear that we're going to have anywhere between a $15,000 and $30,000 bill, depending on if we're a corner lot, a rounded lot, whatever have you, especially in these economic times, it's a bill that even with payment terms, we don't know how to cover. I sent the poll data over, Scott. We did our best to organize. We got 94 votes. All the ones I submitted you were ones I could get addresses for in case you needed them for the record. Our neighborhood, as an overwhelming majority, did not do sidewalks, and hopefully save that approximate $323,000, I think it was mentioned. And I would just ask that you guys please take that into consideration. Think about, the ask of us to save that money so that we can hopefully lower our assessment cost, and just kindly consider working with us on either the payment terms or anything you can do to help us, bear that burden, if you will. So I don't know if this was the proper moment to speak it or if we wait till that line item, but I did print out a copy, Scott, in case anyone needs the stuff I sent you. But I know there's others here that may have questions about the written responses, because I know there was one we didn't get an answer to. I don't know if it was just missed, but that's all I would ask you guys. Please just consider those costs and keep in mind that it's a real life implication for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Roger Peters. I live at 1807 Statue Drive. Along the same vein here, I'm here about the Liberty Heights. I had gone to City Hall a while back and inquired about how to calculate corner frontage, because I live on a corner. And I was told that the committee or one of the groups was going to look at changing how corner lots are calculated for special assessments since we were excluded from the TARF. I have not heard back on if that's going to happen. I was hoping you could work out a more equitable situation for corner lots since doing some of my own numbers, a corner lot's going to pay significantly more than their neighbors. Me in particular, I'd be paying probably $4,300 more than my neighbor who has a much bigger house and a much bigger yard. Some of us are being penalized just for how our lots are set up or the location of the lots. So, you know, I don't know how many of us can afford $25,000 street assessment bill when you factor in the corners and the sidewalks and the aprons and everything else. So if you could put some attention to how corner lots are calculated and find out a better solution, cost sharing with the city, cost sharing with the subdivision, whatever we could come up with, whatever could help us make this a little bit more fair for everybody involved. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Yes, Mike Bartlett. I reside at 1845 Hedgeview Drive in Liberty Heights. So I come a little bit further on that. I just wonder whether we actually do need this, right? Do we actually need sidewalks? Do we actually need gutters? This is an ecosystem, and this area there's lakes, and there are things that move around between those lakes. And I know that I've noticed as I walk those areas that there are some things, particularly like tortoises, turtles and things like that, that try to move from one lake side to the other. I think they'll have a lot of difficulty doing that. Now, it may seem a small thing, but I'm asking what is the real purpose of actually putting that in and disrupting the ecosystem? I'm no ecosystem expert. I'm a mathematician, so I can't really say for sure. But I don't want to get caught up in the fact that we could upset that ecosystem because those lakes are there for a particular reason, and that makes up a complete ecosystem, and we should work towards not upsetting that as much as we can. So I wonder if this project is really worth doing that. Okay, I know there's a lot of problems with the finances of that. I really don't understand it. I've only been there 2 years, so that happened a long time ago. But it seems that it doesn't warrant actually even moving it forward. So I'd ask you to put that into consideration.
Thank you.
Julie Meyer, 1844 Hedgeview Drive. You may recognize, Shar might recognize me because I did file an open records request yesterday. Very thorough information related to all of the finances and the happenings of the two developers. So I'm hoping that at the very least, perhaps delay the voting of the sidewalks until I have an opportunity to receive those documents and
Thank you.
I'm Brooke Zellhofer. I reside at 1491 Briggs Lane in the Liberty Heights subdevelopment. I guess my ask from you is to consider perhaps delaying this project overall for maybe a year or two. When we came here last Thursday to speak with you, one thing that I brought up is the cost of inflation has really driven up costs of projects like this. We've hopefully would be seeing that inflation resolve over the next year or two. One of the members of the council did say that when Nature Trails was assessed a few years ago, it was assessed at about $60 a square foot, and our development is looking at $100 a square foot, which is a very significant difference. And I will echo what other people have said. I have a corner lot. Based on the estimate that I received from the city, I would have paid about $20,000, which is quite a large sum to have to try to pay. So just to consider perhaps delaying the project to see what the cost will be in the next year or two is something I would like you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Holst, 1490 Briggs Lane. Just echoing the same sentiment. I know no one should feel sympathy for my situation, but we just moved into the house 3 months ago. So we just bought a house, really excited about a new house. And then next thing you know, we're finding out we're going to have, like Brooke mentioned, we're actually right across the road, so we're a corner lot too. We're looking at probably a $20,000 bill, and that's on that $100 a linear foot measurement. If it starts getting above that, we're looking at, $25,000 bill. Like many have said, in a economic situation that's, depending whose definition you want to use, whether or not we're entering a recession or in a recession, with inflation and all that, I think we all understand it's a little bit of a tough economic situation to now all of a sudden have basically a year to plan for a maybe $25,000 bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during the public hearing? Anyone else? Seeing no one, I will close the 2023 budget public hearing portion of the meeting for this evening. Before we move on to the discussion and consideration of the public hearing, I just want to make a few remarks. I want to express my gratitude to former Finance Director Mike Easker for helping me through the process with the budget, and also our interim Finance Director, Andy Call. I really appreciate all of the help that they gave me. Also very grateful to our council members, Council President Stevenson, all of our department heads and staff. This has been a difficult process this year, and I'm very grateful to all of you for your assistance with it. We faced some really unprecedented challenges this year, inflation being one of the biggest ones. Who would have been able to foresee the rates of inflation that we've had this year, and how do we budget for that? So that was a big challenge for us, figuring that out. But also the labor shortages that we're faced with and supply chain issues. How do you plan for, how do you budget for purchasing items that you're not even sure you'll be able to get? So that was just an additional challenge with this being my first budget with the city. Nevertheless, I maintain certain priorities in this budget that I feel very strongly about. One of those is retaining our current employees because there is such a labor shortage now. It was very important to me to recognize our employees and try to more appropriately pay them, considering we had not done a full salary evaluation since 2013. So we were also in the midst of that salary evaluation over this summer. So that made it a little bit challenging as well, just trying to figure out that balance of rewarding our employees more appropriately in light of inflation. That's very difficult nowadays. But it made it very difficult for me as well to figure out and make that decision about not adding additional employees. There were 4 departments that requested additional employees, and that was a very tough decision for me to say no to adding additional employees as we were trying to more appropriately compensate the employees that we already have at the City of Neenah. I also just want to reiterate my commitment to maintaining the highest level of service that we possibly can in the city. Neenah is a great community, and we're known for being a great community. I want to keep it that way. I want to do everything I can to maintain that high level of service to our residents. And also just want to make sure that we are focusing on being exceptional, not just acceptable. So that is my number one goal. So again, I just want to thank all of our department heads, and particularly Andy and Mike Easker, and for all of your guidance, wisdom, and patience as we work together to put the budget together. So with that, we'll move on to item number 2. Discussion and consideration of the public hearing and other matters relating to the recommended 2023 operating budget and 2023 capital improvements program budget. Item A, consideration of resolution number 2022-19, adopting the 2023 operating budget and 2023 capital improvements program budget for the city of Neenah. Is there a motion? There's a motion by Alderman Stevenson. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Borchert. Is there discussion on this item?
Able- Do I have the floor?
Yes.
Okay, just so all the people, and thank you for all for coming, and thank you for the public comment. It's refreshing, quite honestly, to have people come out and share their thoughts with us on the matters that affect their lives, their daily lives, both professionally and personally with your residential properties. Just a kind of a explanation as to how things are going to work here, and a little background. It's the mayor's responsibility to create the operating budget and the capital budget for 2023, and she submits that to the Common Council. The Common Council has held between 9 and 12 hours, I believe, of deliberations. Many of you were at some of those deliberations. And we, during the budget deliberations, lots of questions are asked, and council members identify potential amendments that they would like to take under consideration at tonight's meeting, rather than trying to amend a budget each night. I've done it both ways, and this by far is the most smoothest and most clear way of doing it. So there have been a number of suggestions and ideas that council members have that we are all aware of, but that doesn't preclude anyone from making a motion to amend the budget tonight during deliberations based on what they've either heard here or just further thought. So with that, I will do what I would consider a housekeeping amendment to begin. It's number 4 on the council's list. The mayor had IS team had presented a budget that included additional personnel and additional contracted services. The mayor reduced those items, but we didn't take the cost of operating those within each of the budgets out of the individual budgets. So I'm going to make a motion to reduce the IS service fee by the $162,540 that the mayor had recommended, and that it applies to each budget per list I had. And we all got. It's $162,540. I'll make that motion. You want me to do that here, Chair? Sure. I'll make a motion to amend based on that. You get a second?
We're just, okay, there's a motion by Stevenson, seconded by Boyette.
No discussion on it?
Is there any discussion on it? We're already voting on
This
it.
matter of Robert's Rules of Order require the opportunity to discuss. So we're voting?
Yes. All right, now we're in the discussion phase. Okay. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item? Is there any clarification needed on this item? Seeing none, please cast your vote. That motion passes 9-0.
Well, I have the floor. I'll also move to increase the revenue section of the school district liaison program by $38,000 and decrease the general fund use of undesignated fund balance by $38. This is based on action that the Public Services and Safety Committee has taken and has been put on hold as it relates to the current status of our school liaison program. So I anticipate additional revenues coming in, and the $38,000 is a somewhat capricious number that I used based on discussions I've had with Mayor Lang and Chief Olson. So I will make that motion to amend by adding additional revenue from the school district and reducing our reliance on fund balance by $38,000.
Sorry, we have to add that motion.
Chad, did you want to go down the list? Were you prepared that?
More so than.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I just thought I would do that so
You-
people could see how we
Right.
do it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
cover all of your.
Yeah.
Yep. Sure. There's a motion by Alderman Stevenson, seconded by Alderman Boyette. Is there any discussion on that item?
I just have a quick question. So, how, if the results come different than what that 38,000 number is, how does that work in terms of updates or adjustments if the outcome is?
Well, if the outcome is anything but $38,000, we'll have a budget. We'll either have a budget surplus or a budget shortfall based on whatever revenues we finally negotiate.
Okay.
Right? Is that fair?
Thank you.
I can tell you in my 35, 34 plus years, we've never hit the budget dollar for dollar. Any department, anytime.
Are there any questions or comments on this? Alderman Skirms.
I have a question. I wasn't at that meeting, so it's not clear to me how we came to the conclusion that district was going to. Can someone shed light on that for me?
My answer would be we are in ongoing negotiations with the district at this point. I'm not convinced that this would be the right move, but it's certainly Council President Stevenson's choice to make this motion.
Okay.
Certainly his right to make this motion as well.
Thank you.
Alderman Erickson.
I have a question for the mayor. What was the initial proposal for the school district?
The initial proposal for the school district was 75% of 39 weeks would be what they would be funding. That was what we presented to them. That was under consideration. Council President Stevenson had a different idea that has not been formally introduced to them at this point. I'm not convinced that they would be willing to go for this change, but like I said, it's certainly Council President Stevenson's right to offer it. Andy, would you like to make any further comments on that? Did I miss
No, I think
anything?
that's sufficient. This would fund 2 SROs, though. With the new high school, it's changed the dynamic of the SRO program that Chief Olson might be able to explain better. But this, we're debating how to fund 2 SROs.
Right, because we have had 2 SROs, and we would like to continue to have 2 SROs within the city of Neenah. Alderman Stevenson?
Yeah, thank you. So historically, the school liaison program has been funded for as long as I've served on the council, with a 75% contribution funding from the school district. That typically would be because kids are in school for 9 of the 12 months, and that's 75% of the cost of the employee. With the dynamics of the new the new high school being built, and that school district or that new high school sitting outside the boundaries of the city of Neenah, there's obviously discussions going on as to how the school liaison program is ultimately going to be structured. And rather than funding it at a continued 75%, somehow there was an agreement that, or there was a discussion regarding 75% of 75%, which is the way they do it in Menasha. And I had strong feelings at the Public Service and Safety Committee that wasn't in the best interest of the city of Neenah. And on a vote of 4-0 with all council members that were there, the vote was to not support that, and we tabled it so that we could have continuing discussion. I think it would be inappropriate for us to pass a budget that shows 75% of 75 if our intent is to try to get more money out. I mean, we passed a budget that shows the funding as it currently exists that 4 of the council members have voted to table. This sends a message that we're interested and want to provide safety for the kids in the district, especially the ones that are being housed and taught and educated within the city borders of the city of Neenah. So we want to maintain, in essence, we want to maintain 2 SROs, and the school district was not comfortable with that until we reached the funding point. And I don't want to get too much into negotiations, but now they are willing to serve 2, but it was at a much reduced cost. And I think that we as a community have the responsibility to provide safety for these kids, and we have to do it in a shared reality that includes all the municipalities that these kids come from. City, town of Clayton, town of Neenah, town of Inland, and the village of Fox Crossing. So by doing this, I'm not saying this is what we're going to try to get, but it sends a message that we want to have further discussion as to how we can provide this safety to the kids.
Alderman Skirms?
I'm sorry, just to clarify, this is the first I've heard of 75% of 75%. I thought it was 75, 25 for 39 weeks.
That's correct. That's the same calculation. It's just a different way of stating it,
Okay.
the 75%.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Lundrum.
Thank you, Mayor. The way this amendment is worded is confusing, and because we're talking about revenue. When we were discussing this, I guess my question is, I was thinking about when we tabled it, I guess my question is, if we table it again, or when we have more clear answers, we would have to take this out of this budget, and we would have no, I guess, placeholder for that. So I'm not exactly sure what to do at this point, especially the way it's worded.
I could try to hit, if we
Or
increase.
the mayor, I'll listen to anyone. Or anyone else that wants to, but, go ahead, Todd.
Well, if we increase the revenue that we would ask the school district to fund, and we end up negotiating something less than $38,000, let's say it's $10,000 more than what there's currently $172,400 in the revenue portion of the budget. And if we were at 75%, it would be $230,000. So the the apples to apple comparison is close to $50,000 here. So if it's something less than 38 plus 172, then we would need to take it from the same general reserve that I'm proposing to reduce, because we have $135,000 that we're applying from last year's fund balance to this budget. And I would propose that that be dropped by $38,000 because we anticipate getting revenues from the school district. If we don't get those revenues, we're going to have to go back to fund balance anyway to fund it. So it would be a simple, well, not simple, it'd be a 2/3 budget amendment, I think. I'm not sure how revenues work. I'm more familiar with expenses. Changes to the budget that would be expenses require a 2/3 vote once the budget's passed. So that it would have to come from fund balance if we don't get the revenue. But if we don't pass the amendment, we might as well just stop negotiating.
We had already started negotiations.
I mean, we budgeted at 75% of 75. The council has voted to table it.
Alderman Boyette.
I'm sorry, I'm a little naive to this. I don't understand why we don't have the information we need to be able to pass things like this on our budget. I mean, it's public knowledge that we're passing our budget this evening and these items are in our budget, so why the negotiations weren't done in a timely manner for us to be able to vote on this tonight when, again, no matter how we fund it, why we don't have, I guess, the other side of this. Like, we all know we have our opinions here, no matter what they are, and we have our facts and we have our numbers, but what's missing is the other side of the conversation. And I guess I'm just curious why we don't have that when it's budget time. It makes it very difficult for us to do our job tonight, I think.
Right. I don't disagree with you on that. I think this is the negotiations on this item started some time ago, but they have not concluded. Became a little bit difficult at times and were set aside. Part of the issue is that we don't technically have to have this contract in place with them until the end of the year or beginning in the fall of 2023. So we're still in a contract with them that was previously negotiated through the end of this school year in 2023. So the timing is just a little bit off, but it would have been nice to have had it all buttoned up and concluded by our budget time. It just didn't end up working that way.
And I understand that. I guess I guess that's even more of a reason for me to second it because we're in the contract and we're going to continue through the contract until basically the next school year. And then we're going to need the funding to go into another contract. And I think at that point, I don't know, like Alderman Stevenson said, we have the money set aside, and if push comes to shove and we need it then we'll have it. But I agree even more so now that it's not a needed item at this time, and we're already crunching our numbers, so I am very happy that I second it. I agree.
I'm not quite following your line of reasoning, though, so I'm not sure you're fully understanding it.
We have a contract. We're using the contract. You're asking, or what's in front of us is asking for us to give more money than we're currently working on.
No, it's asking for the school district to provide more funding for us than what we originally proposed.
But we don't know if they're going to do that.
Right. We don't know if they're going to do that.
And are we going to need that? Are we going to need that? We don't even know.
Ultimately, the goal is to have 2 SROs working within the city of Neenah.
That's what we have now.
That's what we have now. We no longer will be having an SRO at the high school.
None at all.
Well, not at the high school in Fox Crossing.
Oh, correct.
But at the, what will become the current middle school, yes. So a proposal was made because there was an indication that only 1 SRO would be funded within the city of Neenah. So a proposal was made to fund a second SRO with a different funding formula than what we had previously had in order to secure that second SRO. That proposal was put before the school superintendent and was being reviewed, potentially being reviewed by the school board. But it did not get to that point because then an alternative funding mechanism was suggested, or it was suggested that we needed to create a different funding mechanism than what we had proposed to them. So that's where we're at right now. We're still in negotiations.
Do we have a deadline on that?
I suppose by the end of the year. Chief Olson, do you have a deadline date on that?
So for us at the police department, we need to have it done by the end of December so that we can plan for our 2023 staffing at the schools. Currently, the SRO at the middle school has been promoted to sergeant on patrol, but we can't move him to that position until we know that we're going to have 2 SROs next year. Otherwise, he has to maintain his SRO position until the end of the school year, and will leave a patrol sergeant position open for until then.
And just curious, how does your budget look for that? Is that in here? Is your budget proposed for that?
Or,
Manpower?
well, it's, all of our manpower is listed in the operating budget.
I'm just
yes.
asking, for this proposal that we're all negotiating,
Yes, that is the
that
number
in
that
your-
was put in the budget.
Okay,
What
that's
was negotiated or what was proposed to the school district is what is in the current budget that you have. What Alderman Stevenson is proposing is an arrangement that the school district would pay a greater portion of the cost than what we proposed to them. So that's the bottom line.
Yep, okay, thank you.
So I feel that I need to add this, that, you know, our patrol staff is the same staffing levels from 30 years ago. We do at least 5 times more calls a year than we did 30 years ago. We cannot have our patrol officers patrolling the schools during the day. They try to get there as best they can. But if we reduce this, these 2 positions to 1, it is going to significantly affect us and our patrol staff. They can hardly make it to the calls that they're going to today during the day. Now, there are days that are slower, just like anything else, but there's no possible way that our patrol staff can cover the calls at the elementary schools and the middle school. Because when you add 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in one school that's a quarter of a mile long, one SRO it's going to be very difficult for the SRO to even handle that many students. And then for our patrol staff to cover their calls and all the elementary schools, when and you know we have teachers here, and then maybe they can attest to this, but there is no way that our patrol staff can keep up with the calls for service and the calls at the elementary schools. It's not like when all of you went to elementary school. Kids are throwing chairs at teachers, hitting teachers, swearing. I watch the videos every single day from our officers. This cannot happen. So however we approve this, we need to get it approved. So that's what I need to say.
Alderman Steiner.
So just for clarification on the item, I believe both directions that are seeking are looking for 2. The question is just how much we're being paid by the school district.
Correct.
And the school district is deviating from historical precedent of that funding.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
my priority is to get the second SRO funded, and I think our best opportunity to do that is with the proposal that we had initially laid out to them. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your vote on your voting device. Oh.
There's a-
Oh, Brian, see. Oh. Well, I didn't vote. I will vote. I don't have the ability to do so on thing. I would vote no. Motion fails 5-4. Moving on in the operating budget potential amendments. Would,
Can I just ask one housekeeping
Yes.
thing? I don't have a request to speak button to push.
Not yet.
Alderman Stevenson, if you can you tell us the page numbers so we can quickly go back and
The
forth on
school
these?
liaison program is on page
No,
119.
I mean on all the amendments. As we
No, I can't do that.
Okay.
Well,
Well-
I know the ones I'm involved with.
Okay.
We'll try
You're
to
involved with
figure it out.
It's kind of your responsibility.
Right, or
to know where
Andy.
to-
Just
I
so
can
we
try.
can
I mean, I can try to
just
do
so
it.
we can quickly and easily
We'll all
move.
work together to try to
Thank
figure it
you.
out. Item 1 on the potential amendments, would Alderman Borchert or Skirms like to take that?
I'll take that. There's a slight adjustment in that number after corresponding with Chief. The position that I'm about to ask for an amendment to the budget is targeting an April 1st date. So the cost or the increase to the general fund revenue of $116,760 would actually be $87,570, taking away 3 months. I'm gonna check my math. Not a math teacher, but we'll go with the 87,570. So I would like to make a motion to increase the general fund expenditures for the police behavioral health officer for a total cost of $87,570, and increase the general fund revenue transfer from ARPA of $87,570. And then the additional note on that, the plan to fund position is 50% of the ARPA funds in 2024, and then weaning off the ARPA funds and putting the onus on the department to fund it in 2025. I so move.
There's a motion by Borchert. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Skirm. Is there any discussion on this item? Would you like to speak on it? Alderman Skirms? Oh, Chief Olson?
One thing that we would like to add to that, just because we have to supply this person a vehicle, which we'll take out of our administrative staff, but we need to add an MDC in the computer, so we need to add 10,000 to that so that they can have the MDC cage and things like that in the car, because our admin cars don't have those.
So the cost would be 97,500.
Correct.
So I'll adjust that amendment if the second or John would.
I'm good with that.
As a friendly amendment.
Yep.
So the cost would be 97,570. That amendment. Not anymore. Motion.
Alderman Skirms.
Thank you. I've been working with PD for most of this year on this subject and trying to figure out a way to get some help, resources for them. The numbers are really pretty troubling. From 2020 to 2021, the number of mental health calls, and those are defined as attempted suicides, emergency committals, and welfare checks. So those aren't calls that they go out and discover it's a mental health call by the time they get there. So it's just those three. They have doubled between 20 and 21, and they're on target to surpass that this year. So they need some help. And this proposal provides some relief and resource for the PD, but also will provide better service to our citizens. If we have someone dedicated to this function out making those calls, we're going to provide better service to those people. There's a population that PD spends quite a bit of time with, and with this position, we should be able to help those individuals essentially get better care, better treatment. So I'm in complete support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. I second John's statement. I wholeheartedly believe that there's a rise in awareness of mental health, and we definitely need to do something about it. And if it starts with this, I think that's just a small stepping point for our future. I see more coming, and I welcome this. So I will I will be voting for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Borchert.
And partially the reason is a lot of the reasons that were stated that I brought this forth with Alderman Skirms, but also having a point person to find ways that we can bridge the gap between our community resources and our municipalities. So I know that our police department is torn in a lot of different ways and do the best they can. But I also encourage to look into other communities to be able to share resources, because this isn't obviously limited to Neenah. It's limited to Winnebago County, to our surrounding areas as well. So that was my hope, that Neenah can get this ball moving and better serve our community as a whole, not just obviously in Neenah, but looking to other communities for help as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that this was put back in and supported as well. Is there any other comment or discussion on this? Seeing none, please cast your vote.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Council President Stevenson.
Thank you. So I support the creation of the position. I'm tenuous with the funding mechanism, but these dollars are available to us purely because of situations that we're trying to support it with. So I'm supportive of the dollars, but looking out to the out years, tomorrow night we're going to move to close the TIF district, and I think we need to create that operating fund reserve account so that next year we may be able to pull from that. There's $300,000 coming from TIF. So rather than putting this into a budget that has levy limits and expenditure limits, we need to make sure we have dollars available, and we have the good fortune of being able to do that. But I'm supportive of this. I'll vote for it, but we need to be able to plan for the out years until the state allows us to generate enough revenues to fund this within the limits that they set.
I fully agree with your comments as well. Alderman Steiner.
I'm definitely in support of this. I think it's a critical resource that would be huge support to the city of Neenah. I'm just wondering about utilizing TIF in regards to creating this fund. Does that dip? I thought we had an intent of making the closure of the TIF funds for housing stock. Does that change that? Am I missing?
That's a 1-year redirection of the increment generated on the tax bills this December.
Okay.
It's only for 1 year of increment.
Okay.
The dollars Alderman Stevenson is talking about is the surplus that's generated over the life of the TIF. So it's got extra dollars overall.
Okay, I see.
That need to be redistributed. We
Of
can't
which the
just keep
school
them.
district will get about 120,000.
Okay. Thank you.
No editorial there.
Any other comments or concerns on this? Seeing none, please cast your vote. That motion passes 9-0. The next item on the operating budget amendments is Alderman Skirms.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to add $25,000 funding for a grant writing resource for 2023, paid for by one-time ARPA dollars or operating budget surplus, if any is available. The last 2 weeks, we've witnessed the challenge of tax levy limits and expenditure restraints, essentially tying our hands, limiting our ability to provide for the needs of our community. From 2014 to 2022, cumulative inflation's been 30%, yet the gain from revenue sharing over that same period has been 1% from the state. Back in 1983, the state provided 45% of the money for our operating budget. Next year, they will provide 8%. So this is a real dilemma for us, and I think grants are an opportunity to help us fill that gap until the state legislature decides to share some of the $5 billion they're sitting on. This position would be a contracted position, not an employee of the city. The resource would be available for all departments. I think this will demonstrate the potential for investing in this type of resource. A couple of examples that I'm familiar with. Howard Swamico last year hired a grant writer. In the first year, the grant writer garnered $1 million worth of funds. In Wapaka, they hired a grant writer working 30 hours a week. In the last 2 years, he's generated $3 million. So this investment of $25,000, I think, will recover our investment fairly quickly. And I just want to quote David Polish, who's a bureau director at Department of Ed in the state, commenting about grants. He said, currently 95% of grant applications they receive are prepared by consultants. And grant writing is a skill that our staff doesn't possess. So I think for us to compete for these dollars, we need this resource. Thank you.
Would you like to make a motion on that?
I did. Oh, what I said.
There's a motion by Alderman Skirms, seconded by Alderman Borchert. Alderman Weber.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Alderman Skirms says. I've got some experience in the past in kind of nonprofit world, and really it is a skill, I think, that brings a lot of value, and I don't think it's well understood. And there's a lot of opportunity out there, and I think it's $25K well spent, so I will be voting for it.
Alderman Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I like the idea. I would be in support of it. I'm just curious if we do well with this or we don't do well with this. This is ARPA funded. What would we do with the following years if we so choose to continue that?
That'll be up to council next year. I mean, if this generates $1 million, I think that'll be a fairly easy decision. They generate $25,000, that'll be a tougher call.
Alderman Stevenson.
Yeah, I'm willing to try it for a year, but I take issue a little bit with the perception that our current staff doesn't write grants. Our staff writes grants requests all the time.
That's not what I said.
They're not professional grant writers, but where I was headed was I'm hoping that when we sit here a year from now, that we're judging it based on incremental grants and not the fact that we've got $3 million worth of grants, which may have been what we got this year without the grant writer.
No, that's fair.
So I'm just want to make sure that when we identify a win, it's truly a win and not something that staff has been doing yearly if the police department gets their drunk driving grants, speeding grants all the time. So I'm hoping we're not going to, the minute we get that grant, we're not going to write that in the ledger saying we qualified, so this position is justified, because they're writing those grant requests currently. But I'm willing to try it. Again, it's one-time money, and this is the beauty of it, is the position has to prove itself rather than hiring someone.
Yep.
So I'm okay with that.
Alderman Steiner.
Yeah, I am in support of this. I like the way the funding mechanism that it's going to be on a contracted basis, so that doesn't create this position that we're going to have to sustain going forward if it doesn't come through. But I think there could be opportunities for it to fairly quickly sustain itself. I agree with Alderman Stevenson's comments that we have to assess the incremental improvement overall, but I think it's a smart addition.
Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Alderman Skirms. Who do you envision being, what department or what person being the person who will take the lead on this and hire the grant writer? Who's going to be doing that?
I think initially the responsibility should lie within the mayor's office.
Okay.
That may change, but initially, wrong.
All right. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Alderman Weber.
I'd just like to add, one more point to Alderman Stevenson's, points about making sure we are measuring the incremental. I think there's also intangible as well that we, probably could benefit from. That's, our staff, they're very busy. This gives them a little bit of help in that regard, as well as, possibly learning from people that do this all the time. So I think we need to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Any other further concerns or comments on this item? Alderman Hillstrom.
Mayor, Alderman Skirms, I'm just wondering where you got the $25,000 number from, what that's actually going to get us, how many hours per week, based on what other people have done, what are we going to get for that money?
Depends on where we go, where we hire. The best writers out there ask $100 an hour, where we can probably find somebody for half that's in the state that's qualified.
Would it be up to our HR department to come up with somebody then that?
It'd be RFP, RFQ, ask people to bid for it. And there are professional grant writers associations out there, and I've got contacts for those people.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Seeing none, please cast your vote. That motion passes 9-0. I believe that concludes the operating budget amendments. Am I correct in that? Unless anyone has additional operating budget amendments they would like to bring forth at this time? Any? Then we will move on to the capital budget portion. The first item on our list is Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to decrease TIF 9 carry forward of $27,506. I don't believe this for the I-41 sign. It's for the industrial park sign. Is that correct? So it's no effect on 2023 funding, but I'd like to decrease it for that amount. And I so move.
There's a motion by Alderman Erickson, seconded by Alderman Boyette. Alderman Borchert.
Just a clarification, Alderman Erickson, was this the sign that is the introducing to the industrial park, or the sign that was going to be displayed on the South 41?
This is a sign that would go on Industrial Drive right in front of Community First, in between Community First and Amcor on that island.
Okay, so I wasn't sure when it says the I-41.
Yeah, I don't know why that is either, but it is the
Originally came from the funding of the I-41 sign.
Gotcha. All
It's
right,
remaining dollars from that.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. And I agree.
Alderman Stevenson.
Yeah, so Alderperson Erickson, you mentioned that there would be no effect on the operating, or wouldn't have an effect on the operating budget, but the $27,000 has been borrowed and it could be moved to a fund balance, or it could be used to reduce this year's borrowing. Is that correct? Does it have to be for TIF 9? Okay, well, all right. Do we have any borrowing in 9? I'll find TIF 9. There is. So we were going to borrow $61,250 in for TIF 9. Why don't we reduce that by $27,000?
I agree.
Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your vote. That motion passes 9-0. The next item is Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you. I'm going to try to connect all items 6 and 7, because I wouldn't want to do the boathouse repairs and incur additional borrowing. So my motion will be to increase capital facilities by $20,000 for the Whiting Boathouse repairs, but not increase facilities borrowing. And at the same time, I'm going to include in that motion the items referenced in number 7, which is decrease capital facilities expenditures of $155,000 for Arrowhead Park Drive and Trail, and connection, design, engineering, and Arrowhead Park Prairie Prep sanding, seeding, and management plan for $60,000. Seeing that Director Kading can fund those projects with existing carry forward dollars. So what the motion is to add $20,000 of project cost, but reduce borrowing by $155,000, and recognizing that what the $155,000 was going to be spent on has dollars available. So it'll remain in the budget, but we'll use carry forward dollars. Is that clear? That's my motion.
There's a motion by Alderman Stevenson.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Alderman Boyette. Questions, comments, concerns on these? You want to actually lump 6 and 7 together?
Well, I wouldn't, yeah, because I don't want to borrow an additional $20,000 for Whiting Boathouse. And the net effect of this is we're going to get the boathouse done. We're going to get all the stuff done that we're going to borrow $155,000 for, but we're going to not borrow for it and use carry forward dollars. And we'll end up reducing borrowing by $135,000. Is that correct?
So we're decreasing capital facilities expenditures by $135. That was
we're decreasing revenue of borrowing because we're not going to borrow for the things. But I'm going to use 20,000 of the 155
right
to fund White.
Alderman Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. So after the boathouse was brought to our attention, I actually vote there, and I walked over and took a look for myself because, you know, pictures and in person are sometimes a different perspective, and it is pretty damaging. But what also clicked in my brain while I was there was that it's a place that houses or helps house the Coast Guard. And I'm just wondering if Andy or Mike can maybe, I don't know, shed a little light on why the Coast Guard's not helping us fund the building repairs? Or do we have a contract with them that says we take care of it? Or like, why are we the only ones paying for it when somebody else gets to use it? So I don't know who's got the answer for me, but I'm curious.
Thinking Director
I'm just
Kading might have
curious.
the answer to that.
Does somebody else have the answer? I guess I would look at it like this. If you own a rental property, you know, you're charging people to be there, you're still responsible for the maintenance and care and restoration of the building as it exists. If something fails, it's on you as the owner of the building. That's probably as simply as I can put it. I do know that the Coast Guard takes care of their inside. They take care of the painting. They do the work on the inside of the building. They have paid for new garage doors, so we've worked out some of those sort of things. I guess as I look at as the foundation of the building, even though it doesn't have a foundation,
Right.
that would be the city's responsibility for those repairs.
And can I ask, what do they pay for rent? Maybe we need to up it. I don't know.
Well, it's probably a good time to be looking at it, and I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head.
Thank you. I appreciate
you
it.
bet.
Yep.
Are there any other questions on items 6 and 7 combined? Anyone? Seeing none, please cast your vote on your voting device. That motion passes 9-0. The next item on the list is Alderman Skirms.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to introduce this motion because I think since it's been brought up that we ought to talk about it. I move to decrease the capital facilities expenditures by $30,000 for Carpenter Preserve concept design and decrease the capital facilities borrowing by $30,000. First of all, Jerry, Kate, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. Carpenter Preserve is a really wonderful asset. There's amazing things we could do out there. So I agree with you. It's a great asset, and there's potential out there. The reason I brought this up is I got a copy of the master plan. Yeah, it's old, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. As Director Kading said, the base information in there is very good. And I don't believe that taking this out of the budget prohibits us from working on Carpenter. The fact that we've started to tap into some volunteers, we can focus on that, and I think there's elements of the master plan that we could use without doing another design, paying someone to design something new. When I asked Director Kading about this, he characterized it as reinvigorating the planning process. I think we can probably use what we have and reinvigorate Carpenter by other means. So that's why I'm suggesting it be taken out. Thank you.
Would you like to make that motion?
Yeah, what I said.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is there a second on the motion? Seconded by Alderman Erickson. Is there any discussion on this item? Any questions? Alderman Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Discussion on this item has gone on for over 20 years now. I was on the original committee that did the original design for it. There weren't that many houses back out there then. Since then, it's become a mature subdivision. People were wondering when we're actually going to do what we said we were going to do out there. It's true that some of the original plan would stay somewhat the same, just as Arrowhead Park, some of the original design may stay some of the same. We're changing that. It might not cost $30,000 because they can use part of the old plan. That's what we're estimating that. But I'm going to be voting to leave it in because I think that neighborhood needs to finally get this going after 20 years, and they deserve us to support it.
Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Alderman Hillstrom. This plan is relatively old, but why didn't anybody do anything with the plan when it first came out? Why did it sit for so long without any action?
Usually because the mayor would take it out of the budget because there isn't something else to get done, whether it's Carpenter Reserve or some other park. There's always been a reason to take it out because something else always had a higher priority. So it kept coming out, kept coming out, kept coming out year after year. So it's...
It wasn't taken out due to the fact that it was not, there was some things that people weren't sold on. It was just taken out because
no.
of... Okay.
Yeah, it was just taken out because of the... And I'd really like to see something done out there. Well, former Mayor Carpenter's still alive, and, we've dedicated this park to her 20 years ago and done nothing with it. So, it's kind of embarrassing.
Alderman Steiner.
So, I'm in a position where I certainly want this to move forward because, as we've talked about, it's been around for a really long time. And I guess the part I'm trying to wrap my head around is $30,000 feels like a lot to refresh a plan that was developed and nothing really happened to it before. That's where I'm conflicted a bit. I guess the thing that I'd be interested in hearing more about, so one, $30,000 to refresh a plan is a lot. So I'd be interested, why is that so much? And then I think number two, if this didn't move forward, does that mean that absolutely nothing happens, or do we make it work, but it just isn't ideal and we kind of have to do something different? I mean, maybe Director Kading, I don't know if you could illuminate just a little bit in terms of what is the $30,000 getting us, right? It just feels like it's kind of pouring more money after stuff that's already been spent.
As far as overall costs, just please consider this. We just approved $41,000 for Arrowhead Park, and that's 30 acres. This is 100 acres. And looking at $30,000 to relook at the plan, to meet with the neighbors, to establish a new game plan moving forward, including a forestry management plan and reforestation plan. We look at what's changed since 2001, 2002. Obviously, Emerald Ash Borer has had a great and significant impact out there. We will and have lost the majority of the forestation that has happened out there. The current condition of the buckthorn, even if you just drive and don't even get out of your car, you can just drive down Pendleton Drive, and you can see the amount of buckthorn that has overtaken the park in and of itself. There's many different ways of approaching it. The volunteer effort that has started is one awesome way to do that. However, there's other mechanical means and ideals and thoughts as well to how to address that. As we start to look at the overall or the former game plan, and I don't think you're going to see this huge change. We also need to identify new costs. We've thrown around the dollar amounts, but those are based upon old numbers. So we do really need a good cost estimate moving forward. We also need a good idea of what sort of additional new or grant fundings. You talked about grant fundings before. I believe Carpenter Preserve is an ideal spot and location because of its passive nature. It'll relate well to our Wisconsin stewardship funding and opportunities there. So we need to be able to clearly identify what our game plan is. So so that next step is we can go into a grant funding stage and secure dollars to help us offset those costs and move forward. And with Jerry's efforts in this volunteer effort, that will play well in getting grants for the Carpenter Preserve and development.
I'm going to ask a naive question.
Yep.
So you listed out a bunch of items, action items that have to take place, right? Buckthorn, et cetera. So I guess I'm wondering, why wouldn't some money be put towards just taking action on the items that we know have to occur, rather than kind of paralysis by analysis? Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to characterize it too negatively. I'm not, but I'm just trying to understand. We kind of keep looking at it, but we also know what we have to do at the same time.
And I would agree and disagree with that statement that we know what we have to do. There's some things that we do know. Let's get rid of buckthorn. That's going to have a positive impact. Successful efforts that I've been involved in other locations have yielded a forest floor that's much more active and alive today at Fritzie Park and the Rydell property in the village of Fox Crossing. But there's also, in that current game plan, there's a nature center, there's parking lots, there's this, there's that. We either need to affirm or reaffirm that that's something we want to do, or that's things we don't want to do. What new things should we be considering? I dare say I put this on the table tonight, but do we look at some sort of mountain biking opportunity out there? Is that something we should or should not do? I think those are the sort of the questions that we need to get resolved as we develop a game plan moving forward. Where are the bridge locations? Where are the crossings? We can take a good estimated guess as a professional. Yeah, this is a great spot. I can tell you that. But it also takes another person looking at those sort of things and working it through.
I myself I'd like for it to move forward. I'm going to support keeping it in, but I would really hope that this, would start moving forward after this, once we have the plan to really have action. And I know not all of it is in your control, and I just want to make that clear that I'm not stating that there's collective challenges and it's a complicated issue. I know that.
We're going to keep grabbing Jerry on Saturday mornings, and he's already got 3 days put in our calendars for us to continue to work out there, and we'll continue to do what we can do. So,
thank you.
Looking forward to that.
I appreciate it.
Alderman Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you come back up? So again, I agree with the sentiment that, yeah, we want to see something done. And it has been forever and a day. I wish he had a brother that could help him. But the way it was stated is that they've had some recent activity with volunteers, and maybe with the spotlight on it now, they can do more and get more physically done. I would like to see it go down for one more year because of the financial aspect of our budget this year. These are, like I tell my kids, these are tough times and necessities. And then you have your want list and you have your need list. And I get it. This is a really big want list. And I feel like, with another year, the volunteers can do a lot, and you can have your meetings and come up with, if you want the bike trail or whatever, and then you'll know what you need to go into to spend next year to have that consult done. And at this point, it's been, I'm told, 20 years, and I don't want to say the cliche, but what's one more year at this point? So I'm just looking to cut corners on our budget. That's all. It's nothing personal. So I just want to make that clear.
Additional $135,000 that we made available.
Alderman Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you. I'm inclined to get the project started with, like, develop it with $30,000 of, we have a mayor now, to Lee's point, we have a mayor that has acknowledged the project, right? He's put $30,000 in for budget, for continued planning. What can we do with taking $30,000 and start the buckthorn, or prioritize the thing and build? But if you want to spend it to, I also get additional programming. So my guess is it's not going to be that hard to get this implemented if this mayor has acknowledged priority in redesigning it. I doubt she would spend money to redesign it without spending the money to implement it. But, sooner versus later. And so just a rhetorical question, is the $30,000 better spent doing something in the park? And while we're doing that, try to figure out what enhancements or what improvements we could do to improve it, like mountain biking or whatever else we can do. I don't know. I don't want to go cheap on it, but we waited 20 years before we, and now we're going to spend more money to plan. And I'll support it if that's what we think we need to do. But let's get it going.
And if I can respond, I'd just like to say that you're right. I agree with the sentiment. However, there's not a lot that's going to get done other than replanning. How much of that 30,000 is going to be spent on actual physical difference out there? It's for planning. Well,
that's my point is retarget it. Don't use it for planning and use it to take the buck, or prioritize what's in the existing plan.
And I would be fine with that, but to not see a difference, and at a time when, our borrowing is through the roof and rates are higher.
To the motion on the floor, any motion to remove it, I think, would be counterproductive. But I think I'd rather so I'll support keeping it in the budget, but I'd propose we spend it on doing something versus.
Are you going to amend it?
No.
Because I would second your amendment. We can reallocate it for that use.
If it's in the budget, we can always reallocate it.
Are there any further questions, concerns, comments on this item? There was a motion by Skirms, seconded by Erickson.
To remove.
Yes. To decrease. So voting yes means you're voting to decrease. Voting no means keeping it.
Say that again. I didn't quite hear you.
Voting yes means you're voting to decrease the expenditures or remove it. Voting no means you are keeping it in budget. Seeing no other questions, please cast your vote on your voting device. That motion fails 7-2, which means that it stayed in the budget. Item number 9 is Alderman Lendrum.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to do a little bit, as you would say, housekeeping. Alderman Stevenson, we used to have a running total of our levy limits and our borrowing limits as we did these amendments.
I never did that. Mike did it. Andy's doing it, I bet.
Okay. So are we on track? Are we getting close?
Oh, which one specifically? Like
Either
levy
one,
limits?
both. I'm interested in both.
So we haven't changed the levy at all tonight. So we're still on track there.
Okay.
There isn't really a borrowing limit. We have decreased it so far by $162,000 though.
Okay.
So it's just under 16 million in total at the moment.
Okay. All right. It's just nice to know that as we go along. Okay, on to mine. I'll be making page 284. I'll be making a motion to decrease public infrastructure expenditures by $40,000 for the library bump out. and decrease public infrastructure borrowing by the $40,000. I am I'd call a fairly frequent flyer to the library, and losing 6 spots up front, I think, is a mistake. Every time I go, it is parents with very, very small children, preschool children, and elderly. We have a lot of very popular programming there for the elderly, and I would hate to see 6 of those spots up front removed. To me, I feel like that would force those parents of young kids and the elderly across the street, and I think that's sort of counterintuitive to what safety bump out is all about. And coming off the Oak Street Bridge, the Theta Clark Bridge, and taking a right there at the library, I probably do that at least 4 times a day. I can't picture how a bump out is going to be safer. I feel like I can't picture that right there. I think we have enough visuals to worry about with the crosswalk right there. And I feel like people are going to be slamming on their brakes and being surprised at the bump out, at least for, a couple years. And I think that's a dangerous situation too. So, that is my motion, and I am pushing my button.
I second that.
Motion by Lindrum, seconded by Boyette. Alderman Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. In addition to what Alderman Landriman said, I agree with that. I also feel like, it's hard enough to find parking in that area. There's 2 handicap spots. And it seems, and I say that because it seems more and more today there are harder ways to find, or harder places to find available parking for handicapped people, let alone elderly and children. And so if we're going to take those 6 spots out, I can't do the math because it's negative for me. I've been to the grocery store, and there's parking for elderly, and there's parking for pregnant mothers, and there's parking for disabled, and we have 2 disabled parking at the library. I know there's more than 2 people that utilize the library that have some kind of physical ailment that can't utilize the walking, the distance. And if you're handicapped and you park there to go to the farmer's market, you're at the opposite end, so you're walking even further. So again, we have already that issue. And if we're going to take parking off the street there, I think that's going to create a double whammy with our parking there. So that's all I have to say.
Alderman Skirms.
Thank you, Mayor. This issue came up in the spring during CIP. We discussed it and voted to keep this in for safety reasons. Personally, I think safety is more important than some parking spaces. Since this was on the agenda, I spoke with Director Kaiser, Director Hayes, Director Robb, Traffic Engineer Mertens, and all of them feel we need to leave this money in there. The specific location we may not know yet, but with the downtown plan being developed and soon to be revealed, I think we're going to need a crossing down in that part of the block. The distance to walk if you park on the south side of the street to go down the light, cross, come back. It was stepped off recently, and it's further than I would want to push a kid in a stroller and tagging along a toddler. So I think it needs to remain in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Boyette.
Yes, I'd like to ask James Merton to speak on this regarding the future downtown plan.
Testing. Does it work? Okay. So with regards to the crosswalk, for the bump out and adding a crosswalk there, we worked with Director Rob on that. And I guess with regards to the downtown plan, I guess to answer that, it kind of depends on what comes out of the downtown plan, but if what I'm expecting might come out of it, I want to be careful in saying that if we go about installing the crosswalk today, and then the plan comes out and it incorporates a modification to the layout of Wisconsin Avenue, we would have to redo some of the elements to that. It basically would have to be redone because of the reallocation of parking to fit in what I presume might be in the downtown plan. So I'm making assumptions, but I just want to recognize that does exist. But overall, I think, as you had mentioned, I think it's safe to say that the Public Works Department is supportive of this measure.
And so, because that project isn't finalized either, I think keeping this in could come back and bite us, and it's going to be money wasted, because if the downtown plan is approved and the changes need to be made, that bump out that we put in tonight that we're approving for may have to come back out and be redone. So I think that's just not wise this money.
Alderman Skirms.
I'm not suggesting we break ground on building a bump out until we get the plan back from downtown. This budget's for all of next year, so I think putting it in there so we have something available to accommodate it, I think is wise.
I have a question for Director Hayes. Any sense of a timeline on the changes that are potentially being proposed by the downtown plan?
So the plan we wrap up near the end of this year, and then would look at implementation. So I would suspect that we could, depending on expenditures, if there's cost associated, level of cost, you could begin implementation in 2023. Clearly, things that are going to cost more will have to be budgeted accordingly. If there's smaller items or items that don't cost anything, we could begin implementation immediately.
Mm-hmm. And that is in regards to the potential changes to the street layout.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments on this item? Seeing none, please cast your vote.
Yes vote.
Yes vote
removes-
means removing the bump out. No means keeping it in the budget.
Right.
That motion fails. Therefore, it is kept in the budget. The next item, Alderman Stevenson.
Mayor, I'm with the, I don't think the majority of people here are really interested in our internal computer fund, so I'm to defer to Alderman Weber and the Liberty Heights issue first.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Stevenson. So first thing I'd like to say is thank you very much to Mike and the entire neighborhood for your patience through this, for, being very respectful, professional, gathering data. Really appreciate that. I think we've heard from the neighborhood tonight. So what I would like to do is make a motion to remove the sidewalks from the Liberty Heights subdivision plan. So that's item number 1 on page 283 of the 2023 pedestrian routes, amount of $323,000. I think given the situation that we have with the initial developer, dissolving, and then the second developer taking over, and really no mechanisms for funding that were clearly outlined in the initial development agreement, I think it puts a unique burden on the landowner, something that I don't think is very typical. And I do understand that the purpose of our sidewalk program is to try to give everybody, safe route, et cetera. But I don't know that in this case that taking the sidewalks out is going to really reduce, the safety. So I'd like to make that motion. Open to any.
There's a motion by Alderman Weber, seconded by Alderman Borchert. Any comments? Alderman Skirms.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all. It's so refreshing to have people come forward and say your piece in a polite, respectable, knowledgeable, educate us. Thank you. I had no clue what was going on out there. Now I do. This is a great idea. I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Any other comments? I also echo those sentiments. Thank you very much for coming and participating. We really appreciate it. Any other comments? Questions? Alderman Steiner.
I agree. I think before this, the individuals, and some of them are the same ones that are here tonight, who came out, presented yourselves in one of the best ways that I've seen, quite frankly, when people come and speak. And I thought everyone had very clear voice. I think it was very sincere, and it was greatly appreciated. I support.
Director Hayes.
If I know Director Kaiser is not with us tonight. Well, he's with us, but at home. Sorry, didn't mean to say it that way. I was going to call the chicken for not showing up, but I won't do that. I just so we're clear on this, my understanding, and obviously not my department, but street construction is planned, so we would be going through street construction without sidewalk. If sidewalk comes back, that is a much more difficult process and probably a more costly process, so I just put that out there. And just a point of clarification on developers, there was one developer, not two. So we have a developer and a landowner, right? The second individual was a property owner, not a developer. Just clear on it. They bought lots is what they did, so just a clarification.
Thank you. Alderman Stevenson.
Yeah, well, to that point, if circumstances warrant, in my guess, I can promise you it won't be during my career. But circumstances change, they evolve. That's a growth area for the city. And my guess is sidewalks will come at some point, somewhere else. I'm not sure where, which streets. It'll depend on what our friends at the school district do and where parks develop and what developers, who are landowners, by the way, where they develop, what they develop, what kind of things they develop. Eventually, there will be some sidewalks. It's going to be a long, long time. I'm supportive of the concept all because of the reasons Alderman Weber suggested. It is truly a unique situation with the relationship that occurred between the original developer, landowner, and the people he was selling lots to. And that's one issue. And I agree with Chris. If sidewalks are required in 10 years, 5 years, they will be more expensive. And there will be a justification and warrant for those. And because we're doing it in conjunction with the entire project, curb, gutter, sidewalks, we're doing it with them, with neighboring developments, the unit cost will be lower. But I get, and now we're in this inflation, this young lady there who so adamantly shares and very professionally shares that inflation is real and it's high and the likelihood is to go down, maybe. But I get needing to soften the blow. So I'm supportive of the motion, reduce the sidewalks. But with that comes the reality that that's not a guarantee that you ever have them and that you won't be asked to pay for them at some point. But again, I can guarantee you it's not going to be in my career. It's going to be 15, 20 years.
Alderman Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree these are unusual circumstances with this subdivision, but I want to give a few statistics on sidewalks. The council struggled with sidewalks ever since I've been on, which is 2007. We've approached staff to come up with guidelines or whatever, and we've gone along with them, and then we keep changing what our guidelines are. But just some statistics. 69% of adult drivers reported talking on their cell phones while driving. 31% of adult drivers reported reading or sending a text message while driving. 25% of teens respond to a text message once or more every time they drive. 5 seconds, the average time eyes are off the road while texting. Children sustain between 1/3 and 1/2 of all pedestrian injuries each year. 100% of pedestrians hit in Neenah were injured in the past 10 years. Walking along Neenah streets increases the likelihood of being in a crash by 265% than walking on a sidewalk. 88% of all walking along roadway crashes could have been prevented with sidewalk. So while there is a cost, you're risking the health of your children, your parents, yourselves while not doing these sidewalks. I just want you to realize that streets are built in subdivisions, so they're not as wide. There's not as much room for people to walk on the streets. When people are parked on the streets, people are walking in the middle of the street. So be aware you're putting yourselves at danger and your family.
This is really council deliberation.
Yeah. I'd rather not. Well, okay, I'll ask the council. Would you be okay with further public comments during this time? Yes.
Okay.
No. We'll just not have any more public comments at this time. I'm sorry. There's a motion and a second on this item. Is there any further discussion? So this motion again is to remove sidewalks from the project.
I just do have a
Oh,
question.
Alderman Erickson.
So if they have this street put in and then down the road, it's decided that they would have sidewalks, would that then become part of the TARF? Not at all. What?
Sure.
Well, certainly anything is up to the council's prerogative, but the policy on the TARF is that it is for replacement of street and sidewalk. As you know, most of you know, the TARF has not been in place that long. So the history on streets and sidewalk is that historically they have always been assessed, new or replacement.
Right.
The TARF has changed that. With the subdivisions, there has been attempts to try and find a way to minimize that, whether it be the letter of credit, which was an issue in this agreement, whether it be an escrow. But again, the the way the policy, to address your question specifically, the way the policy is drafted now, the TARF is for replacement, not for new
Okay.
ordinance. I'm being told that it's actually ordinance. The ordinance is written that way.
Are there any other questions or comments from the council? Again, the motion is to remove the sidewalks from the project. Alderman Borchert.
Sorry, just a quick, what is the average year span of finance on new construction? 8 years? Thank you. And 3%.
Currently.
Yeah, that's depending on what the council sets the rate at next year, yeah.
Any further questions? Seeing none, please cast your vote on your voting device. That motion passes 7-2. Meaning sidewalks are removed. Alderman Stevenson, would you like to continue?
I'll take the, I'm going to make a motion to increase the IS capital equipment expenditures by $50,000 and create a city computer replacement fund. And increase borrowing by $50,000. That would be a separate fund that would be, have revenues flow in, expenditures flow out. The council can manage it rather than dealing with carry forward from this expenditure. I'd rather have us be able to monitor it and watch who's getting it, when they're getting it, rather than just borrowing the money and then have carry forwards that seem to lapse and lapse and lapse.
Right.
So that would be my motion. Right. That increases borrowing by $50,000.
There's a motion by Stevenson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Skirms. Is there any discussion on this item? Any questions? Alderman Boyette.
I agree with this concept. Alderman Stevenson, I believe that transparency is good, so thank you for this.
Any further questions? Seeing none, please cast your vote on your voting device. Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, 11 and 12, I shared with Andy that I would bring it to the floor. But I'm not clear, quite honestly, what my motion needs to be. And more importantly, I know that there's a modification by Director Weninger of the IS team to change his capital expenditures based on the mayor's reduction of either additional contracted services for personnel or funding of a full-time. So, and we all got the memo from Joe regarding that. And the summary of that email is these two motions. So, and this is streamlined?
I said just read them.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I can't do that without understanding the financial ramifications. How much are we increasing borrowing and or how much are we decreasing borrowing? Yeah.
So 11 and 12 are combined. 11 are the 3 items that Director Wenninger wants to add or increase in his budget. And then number 12 is the 2 items that he wants to decrease in his budget. So they run together. The net decrease of borrowing and spending would be $1,800.
Okay, so so in 11, we're increasing borrowing by 163.2.
Yes.
And in 12, we're decreasing borrowing by 165.
Yes.
Okay, so then, David, Attorney Rashid, then I'll read it, as long as I know that. I'll move to increase IS capital equipment expenditures by 163,200 for switch replacement, 70,400, wireless network device replacement, 52,800, and replacement of UPS devices, 40,000, and increase capital equipment borrowing by 163,200. At the same time, decrease IS capital expenditures by 165,000 for ERP suite at 115,000, fiber builds and acquisitions for 50, and decrease capital equipment borrowing by $165,000. That's my motion.
Is it for a net decrease of $1,800?
Yes, yes, in borrowing, and the corresponding scope of change of services that I so poignantly described.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is everyone clear on this motion? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please cast your vote on your voting device. That motion passes 9-0.
I think I'm done, Mayor.
Thank you, Council President Stevenson. I believe there is another item by Alderman Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move to remove the Hauser Room remodel cost of $60,000 from the capital improvement program budget. And the reason is part of that budget is used for a smart board. Since I've been on the council for 8 years, I think the smart board has only been used once. Nobody knows how to use it. We resorted to paper demonstrations. Nobody is trained. I think smart boards are a really good thing to use, but we have not done a good job using the one that we currently have. I would rather spend that money in the future upgrading equipment in this council chamber. We always seem to be having some type of technical issues. I think $60,000 is way too expensive for that small room. Personally, I like meeting in the council chamber when we have groups like we have tonight. It is just much more comfortable. We've had meetings in the Hauser Room before where people are packed in there, and this is a much better way to meet when you have an opportunity to spread out. I know that the meeting room is used during the day, and I just think $60,000 is way too expensive for that small room.
While we're waiting for the chart to correct, I will make one comment. I would politely disagree that the smart board is not used. It is used on a regular basis during the day by staff. We conduct almost all of our interviews of employees in the Hauser Room and additional internal meetings throughout the day in the Hauser Room. It's really a good place for us to hold meetings. So I would respectfully request that we keep that in. Alderman Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Alderman Erickson. I had a conversation this week with a couple other staff members in the building, and we were just toying with ideas about things that we'd like to see just in a conversation to make things a little more workable on the main floor and potentially doing more planning for that space and for other potential space. And I agree. I think it's a great it's a great time to have a conversation about it. But I'd like to see the money removed at this time. And I don't know, maybe we can have conversations that will maybe make other choices available for that space as well. So I agree with it. I think now is a good time to maybe have conversations about our alternative option.
Alderman Erickson, you made the motion. Who seconded that? Okay. Alderman Borchert, second. Alderman Steiner.
So my thought offhand, as a member of the council, I'm basically only here to use the Hauser room maybe, 2 or 3 times a month, but it sounds like staff do use it quite often, and there's a strong desire to upgrade it. And so my thought is I would like to keep it in there because I trust if they're feeling like there could be opportunities for improvement. I'm basically there for twice a month for the planning commission, and I'm there for once a month or twice for the landmarks. And I would trust if their assessment is it's a need, that I would support keeping it.
Alderman Stevens.
Yeah, thank you. I remember during the workshop session on this item that I shared my thoughts about utilization of the Hauser room by the council, and I thought I had some nods of agreement that we could go back there. But the meeting place is truly the under the authority of the chairperson of the event, and if they want to meet somewhere else, that's fine. But I don't think the $60,000 is being justified because of council participation in that room necessarily. But it's a functioning part of our building, and if we're not going to maintain it to the point where we can use it in the maximum way, then I think we're. And if we don't want to spend money on the smart board, and to be fair, I've been in that room many times when we use sport. Chris Hayes is the only one that does it with any kind of dignity. I mean, he's good at it. I'm sorry. But given that, I've seen him used a lot. So it's been used. So if we think we aren't using it, I think might not be completely correct. And there are other boards and commissions that use it. And we don't want to use the room, then let's make it storage or something. If we're going to use the room as a meeting room, let's make it what it can be.
Yeah. To your point, it's always used for the plan commission meeting, and the smart board is used at every plan commission meeting to show maps and plans and things like that. Alderman Erickson.
So if it's used on a regular basis, why do you need to upgrade the smart board if you do use it? Because if it's currently working for what you need, what function are you going to get with a new one, and how much will that cost?
I don't think that the smart board was the entire cost of the upgrades in that room. I think there have been some efforts undertaken to upgrade generally the rooms and the appearance of rooms. I think it likely has not been touched, painted or upgraded. It's still got popcorn ceilings, and there's more to it than the smart board. I don't know off the top of my head the breakdown of the cost of the smart board versus other upgrades that were all part of that $60,000. So I apologize for that.
Does anybody know how much you plan to spend on a smart board? I know they're very expensive.
Director Weninger.
I don't know what the plans were for that room. Last I heard, we were looking to do what we've done in most of our conference rooms, 70-inch TV with a PC behind it driving it. not so much the smart board. I think it's probably just a misdescription in here. The other conference rooms, when we just put up a PC and large display, we're talking $1,500, $2,000 to get it done. But the smart board in there is probably 15 years old. If you look at it, it kind of fish eyes and is blurry, and you can't get that resolution back in the corners. I agree, it's probably not used as a smart board would be to write over the top of things, but it wouldn't be replaced with that, I don't believe, was Jerry's intentions. Because I know he had looking at this, he's got the remodel, hearing loop, and lighting, which I think most of that comes to more than what the replacement of the smart board with a different solution would come to.
What's the cost of a smart board, Joe?
I don't know.
I did a quick Google search, anywhere from 15, 13, 1,200 to 5,000.
Yeah, and I don't know if he intended replacing it with a smart board.
So I could sort of jump ahead into Alderman Hillstrom, but Jerry and I have talked, a lot of us have talked about that room. I feel very strongly that it's just shy of an embarrassment. So we entertain a lot of folks in that building, in that room, developers, investors, you name it. And if you really take a look at that room, popcorn ceiling, you look at the phone that's connected with a big bundle of blue wire. Fortunately, we don't have the orange and blue chairs we used to have when I started, but they're gone. So and the mayor mentioned the popcorn ceiling. There's a chase in there that can be removed. The closet can provide some additional space to the room. A realignment of the table and seating to provide a better experience for the folks that are attending meetings. I think the smart board that is a question, as Joe mentioned. We, in the other conference rooms in the building, which are much smaller than that room, it is our largest conference room. Obviously, this room is bigger, but it's not really a conference room. We have used the TVs with forget the little computer thing, Joe. Sorry. But it's obviously much cheaper. It doesn't have the functionality of a smart board, but it's pretty easy to use, and we use them a lot in our just about every meeting that we're in. So I would encourage the council to keep these dollars in more so for the sake of just getting that room redone. We have done. Well, I'm not going to go into details of the building, of things that we've done in this building that I've seen us finally change that have been probably original to the building in the mid-'70s, and they look like mid-'70s. So I feel very strongly as a staff person that room needs a makeover. Thank you.
Alderman Hillstrom, sorry.
Thank you. You didn't mention the wallpaper.
Well, I was thinking about the birch tree wallpaper on the third floor when I said I wasn't going to say anymore, but that's...
The smart board, if I remember right, that came from the police station when they purchased a new one many years ago. So that thing really is old. I'm sure a newer one would be so much easier to use and would get used more because it would be so much easier to use and look so much better. I mean, I've been in there for a lot of meetings when it's just not very sharp and just isn't impressive. I mean, it looked like our monitors did a couple of weeks ago when we were having issues, and it was hard to read. So, I'm all for spending the money on it, leaving it in.
Alderman Lundrum.
Thank you, Mayor. I am actually supportive of this amendment to remove it. I don't mind spending money on maybe a new smart board or some of the other immediate needs, but I really think this is premature. I think that we need to have a lot more discussion on the future security needs of this building. That number one, and number two, we have one bathroom. And now that we are hosting the bus shelter, I think that we need to have a more comprehensive plan about especially this floor of this building. So, and we can add on renovating, later on. We can do that in the spring with the, CIP. So I will be supportive of this amendment. Thank you.
James Merton, did you have a comment?
All I wanted to say was that I believe there was some doubt as to whether we would, whether it would be a smartboard replacement or the TV setup, and it would be the TV setup. That is what is intended for the replacement of the smartboard. So that's all I have.
Any other comments or questions, concerns? So a yes vote is to decrease funding on the Hauser room. A no vote is to leave that in the budget. So please cast your vote on your voting device. That motion fails 5-4. Are there any other amendments that anyone would like to bring forward at this time? Any other amendments? Any other concerns? Then we would be back to the original motion that is consideration of Resolution 2022-19, adopting the 2023 operating budget and 2023 capital improvements program budget for the city of Neenah with the amendments that we have made. Alderman Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Andy, can we get a total?
So we did not adjust the levy tonight, so the total levy, operating, debt service repayment, and TIF combined is just shy of $20.7 million. That equates to a tax rate of $8.73 per $1,000 of value, or a 19-cent increase per thousand over last year, or 2022. And then in the CIP, we cut about $437,000 of borrowing, so we will borrow just shy of $15.7 million for 2023.
Thank you.
So Andy, what did we increase expenditures within the operating? Because we didn't touch levy because we funded everything with TARP.
Correct.
What were the expenditure percentage increase?
We increased expenditures by $97,570 to add the behavioral health officer and $25,000 for the grant rating. Like you said, they did not affect the tax levy.
So we are back to that motion by Alderman Stevenson and seconded by Alderman Borchert. Any other comments or questions on it? Alderman Lundrum.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank my council members. It's an honor to work with all of you. We have a very civil council and very circumspect. So, and I really appreciate all the effort. You know, we may have put in whatever it was, 12 hours in workshop time, but I know all of us put in way more than that, going line by line in this budget, line by line, and contacting directors and studying this at length. So I'm proud to serve with all of you, so thank you.
Thank you. Council President Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to dovetail Carrie's comments regarding my council members. I also want to thank the staff, the department heads and other staff that responded to, and it doesn't surprise me that this community elects people who have a passion for the community. And I'm proud, to Carrie's point, I'm proud that I serve with people who execute this plan so professionally and with such courtesy and with great professionalism. That's a tribute to the staff that guides us and answers our questions. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please cast your vote on your voting device. That motion passes 9-0. Are there any other budget matters to come before the council? Seeing none? Is there a motion to
Move
adjourn?
to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Hello.